We begin in quiet, the way night settles over rooftops and fields, the way a page grows soft just before the first line appears. We are here with you and we are not in a hurry. Let your breath find an easy rhythm in and out like a slow tide. If these gentle wanderings help you rest or spark a soft curiosity, you can tap a like or follow for more nights like this. For now, we drift together. We say good evening and the room answers with stillness. We imagine the sky above the ceiling, a broad river of scattered light, and we notice how our thoughts try to move quickly at first. Give them permission to slow. We keep you company as the bright edges of the day fade. We will tell you small truths that fit in the palm of your hand, truths about the universe that feel calm to hold. You can set each one down by your bedside as we go. We begin with a simple picture. When you lift your eyes to a clear night, you borrow light that has been traveling for a long time. Starlight is patient. It crosses space as if strolling through a quiet park, and by the time it arrives at your eyes, it carries the echo of where it began. We are not watching a live performance, but a graceful replay. This delay is not a flaw. It is how the universe lets us keep a record of what it has been. Between stars, there is mostly space, and in that space, there is almost nothing. The emptiness is not harsh. It is gentle, like fresh snow that has not been stepped on. Because most of the universe is open and clear, light can flow for great distances. This is why, even from a quiet street or a balcony, we can feel connected to places that are far away. As you breathe out, imagine that exhale opening more room in the sky. We live inside a galaxy that we call a road of milk. From the side, it is a thin disk with a soft bulge in the middle, and we are somewhere out on a spiral arm, a neighborhood with many suns. Our galaxy turns very slowly by human standards, taking on the order of a few 100 million years to complete a single rotation. That span covers rises and falls of mountains, whole cycles of life, countless nights like this one. Knowing this, we can allow ourselves to take our time too. Sometimes the stars seem to twinkle, but in the quiet of space, their light is steady. The flicker happens close to home, where air moves and waves of warmth bend the path of light. It is the same reason a candle seen through a window can appear to tremble. Up above the air, the stars keep their calm. Let that idea rest on your shoulders. We can soften the muscles around the eyes and notice how the room feels safer when we imagine the sky steady. Not all darkness is empty. Even the deepest night has a faint glow when we gather many distant sources together. Astronomers sometimes talk about a background of light that is very old and very even, a leftover warmth from early times. We do not need the technical words. It helps to know that the universe keeps a quiet memory of its beginnings, like a warm ember under ash. As you inhale, think of that ember glowing gently, not to wake you, but to keep you company. Our small moon lifts the oceans and lowers them again, a slow breathing of water around the world. Rock responds too by a hair's width in a rhythm we do not feel, but that is there. These motions remind us that gravity is not forceful in a pushy way. It is patient and constant, and it connects things. While you lie here, your body listens to smaller tides, the rise of the chest, the fall of the chest, the way the weight in your limbs grows a little heavier with each exhale. When a meteor streaks across the sky, it looks like a star loosening itself and falling. In truth, it is a grain of dust or a small pebble burning in the air, bright for a heartbeat and gone. Many such grains visit every day and night. They are part of an old story, bits of rock that never became a planet, crumbs from long orbits. Watching one is a reminder that brief things can also be beautiful. We let that thought pass like a spark and then fade. We live on a tilted world. Because our planet leans, the light of the sun arrives in different angles through the year, and we experience seasons, longer shadows, gentler days, a winter hush, a summer hum. A small tilt creates a wide variety of moods. This is a quiet lesson in how small changes can ripple outward. If you like, tilt your chin slightly and feel the difference in your neck. Sometimes the smallest adjustment lets the whole body rest more fully. Sunlight reaches us after a short but real journey. It takes a handful of minutes for a photon to cross the space between the sun and the earth. In these minutes, we have time to draw a breath and let it go. In these minutes, a cloud can change shape and a bird can turn on the wind. The delay makes the light feel like a gift, soft wrapped and on its way long before we open it. Between the stars, there are clouds that look like mist through a telescope. They are not cold fog, but thin fields of gas and dust, so spread out that a single handful of air contains far more atoms. And yet, gravity collects these fields slowly, folding them and cooling them, and new stars begin as dim knots inside. We may never see one form with our eyes, but we can picture it, a lantern being lit behind a screen. It helps to remember that growth in nature often begins in darkness and quiet. Planets and moons move around a star the way beads move on a string when a hand guides them. They fall toward the sun but keep missing, curving, always falling, always missing. This is not a dramatic chase. It is a steady pattern. Each world keeps its distance and its pace, and night after night, the pattern holds. In our life, routines sometimes feel dull, yet they can be calming, like orbits. We can let our own small orbits carry us for a while. Some worlds are wrapped in thick clouds and their days unfold slowly. Others always show the same face to their star. Some hold oceans beneath ice, hidden water kept liquid by warmth within. We do not need to list them all to appreciate the variety. It is enough to know that there are many ways to be a planet, many ways to be at home. Our home is a blue one with a thin veil of air and a gentle balance of warmth and cool. It is good to be grateful for that, softly without forcing it. Our galaxy is not alone. Nearby are smaller companions, and farther away are great spirals and smooth ellipses that contain countless suns. These vast cities of stars sometimes pass near one another and slowly merge, like fog banks mingling. The stars inside almost never collide. The distances are too large. What changes is the shape of the city. Knowing this helps when we think of change in our own lives. Sometimes the pieces stay the same and only the pattern shifts. We cannot see the whole universe. We can see only as far as light has had time to reach us. Beyond that, there may be more of the same, more galaxies and more space, or perhaps something unfamiliar. Not knowing is not a failure. It is a kind of night that invites rest. We are allowed to wonder without arriving at certainty. We can place a question on the shelf and let it stay there until morning. There is a gentle puzzle in the way distant galaxies look. The light from them arrives stretched a little, nudged toward red because space itself has expanded while the light traveled. This stretching is quiet and even. It adds up across billions of years, which is another way of saying across many lifetimes of stars. We do not feel the expansion in our bodies. Our coffee cups do not grow wider. On the largest scales, though, the universe breathes out. We match it with a long exhale. Sometimes thin matter between faraway objects and us bends the path of light, the way a clear lens bends an image. We are not adding magic. We are noticing that gravity curves the routes that light can take. This is why a single distant source can appear in two places, or why a faint thing can appear brighter. The universe offers its own lenses, and we peer through them with care. We can also be lenses for one another, bringing quiet things into focus with the right kind of attention. Our own star is steady compared to many. It warms our world with a reliable glow, and its wind of particles forms a cocoon around the solar system. When this wind meets the magnetic field of the Earth, the sky near the poles can bloom with moving light. These curtains are not loud. They do not crackle for the ear. They ripple as if the planet were sighing in color. We think of them now, even if the sky outside is cloudy. It is enough to imagine them and to notice the calm that image brings. We sometimes hear the phrase that we are made of stardust. It is not poetry alone. The heavier atoms in our bones and blood were once forged in the hot centers of stars and later spread into space by quiet winds or final bright endings. Over long stretches of time, those atoms joined new clouds, new suns, and new worlds. And one of those worlds is the one under your pillow. This is a soft way to feel less alone. We are part of a long chain of making and remaking. On clear nights, the band of our galaxy looks like milk poured across the dark. We see it best away from city lights, where the air is dry and the ground is cool. There is no rush to find such a place. We can bring the memory of that sight into a small room. We can say to ourselves that the band is there whether we see it tonight or not. And that thought itself can be restful. It can be helpful to mark the breath now and then. We breathe in for a slow count that you do not need to number. We breathe out a little longer. Shoulders ease downward. The jaw softens. We keep the spine supported. If thoughts return with bright colors, we greet them and let them pass. As meteors pass, brief and lovely. The main glow of the night remains. If we look for patterns, we find them. Stars form rough shapes that people have traced into stories for a very long time. These patterns are not fixed and not the same everywhere on Earth, but they offer familiar anchors in a wide sky. Stories change, and the sky changes with them. What remains is the comfort of pointing and naming. Even silently, without words, you can choose a star or a small cluster and let it be your marker for the evening. Far from our sun, worlds of ice circle slowly. Some are ringed by pale bands of rock and dust, spread into thin disks by countless small collisions. The rings can be so thin that if we look from the side, they almost disappear. The universe is full of features like that, both large and delicate at once. We can hold this idea as we notice details in the room. A seam in the curtain, the line where light meets shadow on the wall, the way the blanket gathers in a small fold by your wrist. If we could hear the universe, it might sound like wind through reeds or water on gravel. In reality, sound needs air or water to travel, and the vast stretches between stars are too thin to carry it. Yet there are rhythms we can translate. Radio waves from distant objects, changes in brightness that repeat, the steady pulse of certain compact remnants of stars. We do not have to listen with ears to know that patterns are there. We trust the patterns the way we trust the beat of the heart when the room is quiet. It is often said that the universe prefers balance. On the largest scales, matter and light seem to spread evenly. On smaller scales, gravity draws matter into knots, and between those knots are wide, quiet regions. This mixture of structure and space creates a kind of visual breathing. Cluster, pause, cluster, pause. We can copy that rhythm now. Breathe in and notice the cluster of sensations. Breathe out and notice the space that opens after. We sometimes wonder where the center is. In many models, there is no single middle. Expansion happens everywhere at once, like a pattern printed on a stretching fabric. This can feel strange at first, and then it can feel freeing. Without a center to chase, we are allowed to rest where we are. Here is a center for tonight. The warm weight of your body on the bed, the steady arc of your breath, the sense that nothing urgent is required. Under the night, time behaves kindly. It is not a clock on a wall, but a soft river that carries light and dust and the slow spin of worlds. Days are short slices of this river, lively and bright. Nights are wide meanders, black glass under the moon. Both belong to the same flow. When worries try to jump the queue, we can set them on a small paper boat and let the current take them around the bend. As we wander, we keep meeting the same quiet principle. Large things happen slowly. Stars take their time to form. Galaxies take their time to change. Even the background glow of the early universe cools so gently that it is still with us. This slowness does not cancel the sudden or the sharp. It simply gives us a frame that can hold them. While you rest, let the frame be wide and forgiving. You might notice your hands now. Let them grow heavier by a degree, as if warm sand is settling over your fingers. Let your feet unclench, your forehead smooth. We stay with you. The facts we share are small lanterns along a path, but the path itself is not demanding. It is enough to see a few steps ahead and trust that the next few will appear when needed. We have spoken of stars and of the space between them, of light that travels, of oceans that lift, of rings that shine because they are thin and countless. We have tried to use simple words because the night prefers simplicity. If a detail felt uncertain, we softened it with sometimes and often and may. Truth can be precise without being sharp. It can be a blanket rather than an arrow. Now we tuck the evening in. Outside, clouds may pass or they may clear. Somewhere, a comet turns the slow corner of its orbit, and a distant world rolls under a pale sun. Here, your room keeps its silence. The door is shut. The air is safe to breathe. Nothing in this hour needs your attention more than rest. We offer a final picture. Imagine that the ceiling is not a ceiling but a gentle dark, and on it a handful of nearby stars draw a loose curve, like a smile or a shallow bowl. Imagine that the bowl holds your breath, and with each exhale, the bowl fills and grows warmer. The warmth rises and fades, steady as a lighthouse seen from far away. You do not need to follow it with your eyes. You only need to know that it is there. We will be here again when you return. For now, let the weight of the blanket be the pull of a small planet. Let the hum of the room be the background of a wide universe. Your eyes may close. Your thoughts may wander into softer shapes. If sleep arrives, it can take your hand and lead you across a short bridge into deeper quiet. If it takes a little longer, that is all right. We keep watch with the stars, and the night keeps watch with us. We meet the night again, where nothing hurries and everything keeps time. Let your breath find an easy pattern, in through the nose, out through the mouth, like a slow tide brushing a quiet shore. If these gentle wanderings help you rest, a soft like or a quiet follow can bring you back here on another evening. For now, we stay with the sky and its unbroken rhythms. We imagine the ceiling thinning until it is only darkness, and beyond it the wide machinery of orbits and tides. We are not here to solve anything. We are here to notice. As you inhale, shoulders ease. As you exhale, the weight of blankets grows a little heavier. The sky keeps turning whether we watch or sleep, and that is a comfort. We begin with a simple shape. An orbit is a fall that never finishes. A planet bends toward its star, keeps missing the center and curves around again, a steady loop drawn by gravity's calm hand. There is no engine and no push, only a balance between falling inward and sliding forward. We can borrow that sense of effortless motion and let it soothe the muscles of the face. Day and night divide the world, like two gentle hands passing the same bowl. At certain moments near the middle of the year and near its end, the length of day and the length of night become almost equal for most places on Earth. This near balance is called an equinox, and it happens because our planet leans just so as it circles the sun. The result is not a sharp switch, but a smooth crossing, light giving way to darkness by the same measure that darkness yields to light. We can mark this with one slow breath in, one slow breath out, feeling the balance settle in the chest. The lean of our world also writes our seasons. Because we tilt, sunlight arrives at soft angles in winter and steep angles in summer, and the light spreads or concentrates across the ground. Other worlds have their own seasonal handwriting. On Mars, the contrasts can be stronger because of a more stretched path around the sun and thinner air that holds less warmth. On Venus, the seasons are muted, wrapped inside a deep blanket of cloud that stirs heat around the globe. There is no single way to be a year. There are many. The ocean answers the pull of the moon and the sun with a slow lifting and lowering, a breathing of water around continents and islands. These tides are not only a story of the sea. The air rises and falls almost invisibly, and even the solid ground flexes by a small amount, like a sleeping animal's flank. The changes are modest and often unnoticed by our senses, yet they happen everywhere, all the time. While you rest, your body keeps its own small tides, the lungs filling and emptying, the heart pressing and easing, the belly expanding and settling. At the edges of the world, where the magnetic field of Earth guides space weather into bright curtains, the sky sometimes writes in green and red. Charged particles from the sun arrive, meet the invisible lines of our magnetic field, and spiral toward the poles. The thin air glows, a letter written in light that fades as quietly as it came. This is not a rare shout, but a common whisper of our planet's shield at work. We can picture it now, even if the night beyond the window is cloudy. We think for a moment about the closeness of worlds to their star. Standing on Mercury, if we could stand there comfortably, the sun would look much larger than it does from Earth, often about 2 to 3 times wider across. The day there turns so slowly that dawn seems to stretch, shadows sliding with patience over rocks. Heat grows and passes with long, deliberate steps. Slowness can be a kind of kindness. On Venus, an even stranger rhythm holds. The planet spins so slowly and in such a direction that one full turn on its axis lasts longer than a full trip around the sun. A day is longer than a year. Thick clouds lock in warmth and move as a single vast river, wrapping the planet in soft, bright storms. We do not need the details to appreciate the feeling. Sometimes in the universe, time takes a different shape. We can let that thought loosen our own schedule for the night. Farther out, a giant gathers many small worlds. Jupiter carries more than 90 moons, a crowded family circling a deep well of gravity. Each moon follows its own path, some locked in careful rhythms with neighbors, some pacing to their own beat, some swelling and flexing under the giant's pull until heat wakes within their stone and ice. When things are large, they do not need to be fast to be powerful. The lesson is quiet and steady. Saturn's rings appear delicate and bright, and from a distance they look like solid bands. Up close, they are flocks of ice and rock, countless pieces keeping company as they race around the planet in thin, flat sheets. The rings are astonishingly wide compared to their thickness, so thin across the vertical that they seem drawn on the sky. The idea that something can be both huge and subtle at once is calming. Your breath can be like that too, wide in effect, gentle in motion. Comets draw long loops far from the sun and then back again, like swimmers who pull away from the shore and later return, trailing a pale ribbon of spray. Their paths are stretched, not round, and most of the time they are cold and dark, sleeping in the outer hush. When they fall inward, sunlight warms dust and ice, and a tail unfolds away from the sun. We often do not see them except in certain years, yet their cycles continue whether anyone looks up or not. This is one more way the sky keeps faith with itself. Our planet sits within a magnetic cocoon shaped by a steady wind of particles from the sun. This wind is not a breeze we can feel on our skin. It is a flow of charged particles and fields that expands through space and meets Earth's protection. Most of the time, the shield deflects the wind and keeps the atmosphere safe. Sometimes the wind grows stronger and presses in, and our technology notices, but the planet keeps handling this weather as it has for a very long time. Shields can be soft and still work. Eclipses are the sky's slow coincidences. When the moon passes into Earth's shadow, our satellite turns a dim copper color. Sunlight bends through our air and the red parts slip into the shadow, painting the lunar surface with a calm glow. When the moon passes exactly between us and the sun, the day dims, and the sun's crown becomes visible, a lace of hot gas that is usually lost in brightness. These alignments are not commands. They are gentle reminders that straight lines and circles can cross in beautiful ways. Small worlds carry their own pace. On an asteroid, gravity is so light that a strong step might become a hop that lasts long enough to look like a slow-motion dream. Pebbles hold their places until a small touch sends them drifting. Dust rises and falls with little encouragement. The feeling here on the bed is different, but we can borrow an idea. It is all right to move as if time is thick and forgiving. The moon keeps one face turned toward us because it is caught in a quiet lock with Earth. As the moon spins and orbits, the two motions match so well that the same hemisphere always looks our way. This is called tidal locking, and it is common. Many moons in the outer solar system do the same with their planets. Seen this way, the moon is not stubborn. It is in step with its partner. We can let our breath fall into step with the pillow beneath the cheek. Some worlds share more complex steps. In the outer solar system, certain moons around Jupiter move in linked rhythms. When one completes 2 orbits, another completes 1, and a third completes a different ratio. These resonances keep orbits stable and can stir the moons from within, heating their insides as they flex and relax. The universe likes patterns that reinforce themselves softly over time. You can feel something similar when a steady cadence of breath brings warmth to your hands. Not all orbits lie in perfect flats. The path of the moon is tilted slightly, so its shadow does not often cross the sun from our point of view. Eclipses arrive in seasons when the geometry lines up, and those seasons return in families with long, slow cycles. Without memorizing names, we can enjoy the idea. The sky keeps calendars within calendars, some measured in months, some in many years. Your body keeps smaller calendars, hunger and fullness, work and rest, waking and sleeping. Earth's axis slowly traces a circle over many thousands of years, a motion called precession. The shape is like the small wobble of a spinning top, so slow that no one person will live to sense the whole sweep. Over long spans, this motion points the north end of our axis toward different stars and shifts the timing of seasons in relation to our path around the sun. The night does not rush. It lets deep changes unfold in patient arcs. We can take the hint and let the jaw unclench. At certain places around a planet and its star, forces balance so that an object can hover in a frame that seems steady. These are calm harbors in the math of gravity, where a small thing can travel with the big ones and keep its station. We sometimes place instruments there to watch the sun or Earth without interruption. The picture is soothing, a quiet point in a large system where the motions cancel and a steady view is possible. There are such points in our routines too. The edge between holding together and pulling apart has a name in orbital life. When a small body comes too close to a large one, the difference in gravity across its width can exceed the small body's strength, and the pieces can spread into a ring. At a safe distance, the same body stays whole. The world holds families of both rings and moons because of this gentle rule. There are distances in our own lives where closeness binds and distances where it strains. Neither is wrong. It is all part of the same quiet mechanics. Phases of the moon are a simple reading of light and shadow. The sun illuminates one side of the moon, and as the moon orbits, we see different fractions of that bright half. The cycle from thin crescent to full circle and back takes a touch longer than 4 weeks, like a song with a chorus that returns and never grows tiresome. Many cultures have used this rhythm to count time, plant seeds, and plan journeys. We can use it to mark a soft habit like setting the kettle or opening a window before sleep. The length of a day is not perfectly fixed. Over ages, the friction of tides between ocean and earth slowly spreads energy and steals a little spin from our planet. Days become longer by the tiniest measures, far smaller than a blink. But day by day, century by century, the change accumulates. The moon, meanwhile, drifts away by a small distance each year. The pair still dance. They simply slide into a new step very slowly. You can soften your breath and let the rhythm adjust on its own. Where oceans narrow, the tides can rise higher. Where they open broad and deep, the range can be smaller. The shape of a coastline and the depth of a channel can tune the local music of water, creating strong currents and calm bays, even though the pull from the moon and sun is the same underlying beat. The same gravity writes different songs depending on the stage. Your room also shapes your rest. A darker corner, a familiar pillow, a blanket just heavy enough. Sometimes the spin of a world and the spin of a heavy atmosphere interact in gentle waves. Air pressure shifts with a daily rhythm keyed to sunlight and also to the tides, and those small shifts can nudge winds in repeated patterns. We often do not notice this background, but pilots and forecasters account for it. It is another layer of predictable change under the more random movements of weather. Predictability is a comfort even when it is quiet and hidden. The sun itself rotates, carrying bright and dark features across its face over weeks. Its outer layers move at different speeds near the equator and near the poles. Winds of plasma rise and fall, and loops of magnetic fields twist out and settle back. Yet from here, the sun is a steady disk, the metronome of our days. Sometimes the simplest view is the truest for our purpose, a constant light that keeps the clock of morning and evening. You can let that clock wind down now because night has already arrived. On distant worlds, a day can be quick or slow, and sometimes the day and the year are caught in simple ratios. Mercury, for instance, turns so that it spins 3 times on its axis for every 2 trips around the sun, a compromise between heat from the star and the tug of tides. This resonance locks in certain patterns of sunrise and sunset for those who would stand at specific longitudes. The universe often finds these regular steps and keeps them. You can choose a step for your breath and keep it too. A thin layer of air transforms the experience of a day. Our atmosphere scatters blue light, makes sunsets red, softens heat, and spreads warmth. It also bends light around the curve of Earth, so that at the moment the sun dips below the horizon, we still see it for a short time. This is why the moon glows reddish during a total lunar eclipse. Sunlight filters through all the sunrises and sunsets on Earth at once and spills into our shadow. The image is gentle and kind, as if the whole world offered its edges to light. Rivers of air ride around the planet in bands that move heat from equator to pole and back again. They meander like streams, breaking and rejoining, carrying clouds and calm, rain and dryness. These winds are steered by temperature, rotation, and the shape of continents, yet they follow rules we can learn. Knowing that the air has its own pathways can ease the mind, the way knowing a city's avenues and alleys helps a traveler relax. Your breath is the simplest avenue of all. We often imagine space as silence, and for our ears it is almost entirely quiet. But there are rhythms we can translate into sound if we wish. Radio pulses that arrive with the precision of a metronome from certain dense stars, the changing pressures in the thin air of other worlds, the gentle creak of a spacecraft as it crosses shadow to light and the metal expands. We do not need to play these sounds tonight. It is enough to know that even in quiet, there is order. While we rest, Earth keeps time against hidden markers. The axis leans this much and no more. The path around the sun lands in the same plane and points to the same stars with slow and elegant motion. The moon lifts the tides and sets them down. The aurora write their letters and erase them. None of this asks anything from you. It is a backdrop, a lullaby written in gravity and light. Take a slow breath in and notice the space just after the lungs fill. Let it soften and drift into the out-breath. With each exhale, let your body gain a little weight, as if the mattress were a small planet and you were settling into orbit, not moving fast, only held, safe and steady. Thoughts might pass like clouds that do not make wind. Feelings might drift like seeds on a still day. We will not chase them. We close the circle by returning to the first image. Orbits are free fall without fear. The ocean is a clock that never ticks, but always keeps time. Air, rock, and water answer the sky with movements we seldom see and often feel. Above the roofline, the planets continue their paths. The moon shows its phases, and Earth turns us gently toward morning. You do not have to follow every motion to belong to them. If sleep wants to arrive, it can step through the half-lit doorway now and sit by your bed until you are ready. If it takes a little longer, the night does not mind. The quiet clockwork will go on, patient and precise, and we will be here again to walk its paths with you. For now, the room is safe, the window is closed or open as you prefer, and the covers are enough. We offer the last soft picture. You are a small moon held by a friendly world, circling without effort, feeling the faintest tide rise and fall through the body and then dissolve. Let the orbit continue on its own. Let the tide ebb. Let the breath fade into the wide and careful darkness. We meet the night again, and its soft light gathers on the windowsill like a hush we can hold. As we settle, let the breath arrive and leave without effort, a slow tide in the chest. If these quiet journeys help you rest, a light touch on, like, and a gentle subscribe can bring you back to this starry path another evening. For now, we turn down the noise and walk into the lives of stars. We begin where stars themselves begin, in cold clouds that hide their work. Dust and gas drift in huge, dim regions where starlight is muted, and the temperature is low enough that molecules can hold hands. Gravity is patient. It gathers threads of matter together until a knot forms, then tightens the knot until it warms. Inside that thickening knot, a small sun is born, not yet shining in the way we know as daylight, but glowing from the slow squeeze of its own weight. Take a breath in and feel the gentle pressure of blankets. This is what gravity feels like to a cloud that is learning to become a star. Around an infant star, a flat disk often spreads out like a quiet pond. Dust grains touch and stick. Pebbles become rocks, and rocks begin to assemble into worlds. Some of these worlds will be small and rocky. Some will hold thick envelopes of gas, and many will never grow large but will keep sweeping the disk like tiny brooms. The star at the center keeps accreting matter, feeding from the disk while also sending out narrow winds that clear lanes. It is a nursery that tidies itself while it builds. Color tells us how hot a star's surface is, and the story is simple and graceful. Blue light often means very hot. White and yellow mean moderately hot, and orange and red mean cooler. Our own sun sits in the yellow family, warm and steady. Not the brightest and not the faintest, but reliable in ways that matter. Across the sky, colors mix like dawns laid side by side, and each shade marks a different pace of life. We often think of the sun as ordinary, and in many ways it is. It is a stable star that has been burning quietly for around half the age of the universe. It turns hydrogen into helium in its core, and that slow conversion produces the light and heat that reach our planet after about 8 minutes of travel. The balance between inward pull and outward pressure is the sun's heartbeat, and it is steady. While you exhale, you can imagine that balance holding, the kind of stability that makes seasons, oceans, and the long story of life possible. Small red stars, the most common kind in our galaxy, live in a different rhythm. They burn their fuel with enormous thrift, sip by sip, and they have gentle surfaces that are cooler than our sun's. Because they use fuel slowly, their lifetimes can stretch beyond anything we encounter elsewhere in nature, sometimes toward spans that are measured in trillions of years. The universe is not yet old enough to have seen one of these quiet stars run out of fuel. It is as if the cosmos planted many patient candles and then sat down to watch. Huge blue stars, by contrast, live fast and leave quickly. Their cores burn bright and fierce like a bonfire that consumes logs in a single night. They shape their surroundings with intense light and strong winds, stir their home clouds, and sometimes trigger new generations of stars by compressing nearby gas. Their lifetimes can be counted in only a few million years, a brief season on cosmic scales. The quiet lesson is simple. More power is not always the same as more time. When stars reach a certain maturity, we can place them on a simple map that astronomers often use to describe temperature and brightness, even if we do not draw the axes tonight. On that map, stars follow a main path for most of their lives, then drift away as they run low on fuel and change size and color. Our sun is on that long central road, a place of calm traffic and dependable light. The details are not required for rest. It is enough to know that stars tend to follow patterns, and patterns can be soothing. Eventually, the core of a star changes. In a sun-like star, after a long, quiet middle age, the center begins to contract and heat, while the outer layers swell. The star grows into a red giant, cooler at the surface but wider so that it brightens. In the far future, our own sun will do this too, though not within any human horizon. The outer layers will drift away in a soft shell, and the remaining core will settle into a small, dense ember. As you breathe, you can imagine that ember as a coal in a fireplace at the end of a peaceful evening. That ember is what we call a white dwarf, a star remnant about the size of Earth, yet holding a mass similar to a significant fraction of our sun. It no longer fuses new elements at its center. It shines because it is hot, and over immense spans it will cool and dim. The matter inside is packed tightly, an orderly crowd that cannot be pushed closer without a different kind of physics taking over. Many stars end this way, quietly, like lamps that have been turned low but not yet fully dark. When a star starts its life much more massive than the sun, its ending can be louder. After burning through lighter elements, its core can climb a ladder of heavier elements all the way to iron. Up to iron, fusion releases energy. Beyond iron, fusion demands it. When the core can no longer support the weight of the layers above, the center collapses quickly, and the outer parts rebound in a burst of light and particle winds we see as a supernova. For a short while, this single star can outshine its entire host galaxy. Then it fades, and new clouds form from the enriched debris. It is a fierce way of giving back. From such endings, many of the elements we rely on are made. Carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen emerge in the lives of stars the size of our sun or a bit larger. Elements heavier than iron, including the gold and platinum in rings and circuits, can be formed in violent settings where many neutrons are available, such as in certain supernovae and in the merging of dead stellar cores. When you look at a metal object or think of the calcium in your bones, you are remembering ovens that once burned or detonated in the dark. We are, in a quiet and literal sense, made of starlight that changed its mind and became matter. Some dying stars leave behind cores that are so dense that the atoms themselves are squeezed into a different kind of structure. A neutron star is city-sized but weighs more than the Sun. If the leftover mass is greater still, the remnant can collapse into what we call a black hole, a place where gravity is strong enough that even light does not slip away once it crosses a certain edge. We cannot see inside these places, but we can watch their effects on nearby gas and stars, and sometimes we can listen to space itself ring when two such remnants spiral together. For now, in this room, the usefulness of this knowledge is simply awe without hurry. In some cases, a neutron star turns rapidly, and its magnetic field directs beams of radio waves that sweep across our line of sight like the light from a lighthouse. We call these pulsars. Their timing can be extraordinarily regular, a tick that could keep time for a patient mind. But even these precise clocks sometimes change their beat just a little as the star shifts beneath its crust or as its batteries of rotation slowly drain. Precision and change can live together. This is another gentle rule of the sky. Many stars are not alone. Pairs and even trios move around their shared centers, their paths linked like dancers' steps. In some pairs, the stars are far apart and live separate lives, influencing only the shape of each other's orbits. In others, they are so close that gas can flow from one to the other, feeding flares or, in rare cases, bringing about a special kind of supernova when a white dwarf receives too much matter and briefly reignites. The universe enjoys companionship as well as solitude. Stars also form in groups. Open clusters are loose gatherings of young stars, often a few dozen to a few thousand in number, born from the same cloud and moving out into the galaxy together. Their shared age and composition make them like class photos in the album of the Milky Way. Globular clusters are older, rounder swarms of many thousands or millions of stars, tightly bound and long-lived, orbiting the galaxy's outskirts like lanterns at a festival. Each cluster offers a different snapshot of stellar life at different times. In the spaces between stars, the medium is not entirely empty. A thin gas laced with dust fills the gaps, and light from hot stars can make certain regions glow. These glowing parts are what we often call nebulae. Their colors arise from different atoms reacting to light and heat, and their shapes are sculpted by winds, shocks, and gravity. Some nebulae are the cradles where stars are born. Others are shells cast off by dying stars. Either way, the light we see is written by energy meeting matter and leaving. Starlight travels broadly in straight lines, but space is not merely a stage. It is also flexible. Massive objects like galaxies and clusters can bend the paths of light in a way that acts like a lens. Sometimes the bending produces smeared arcs or repeated images of a single distant galaxy. Sometimes it simply magnifies a faint background object so that we can detect it. Gravity writes with curves where our eye expects lines, and we learn to read it without needing equations, the way we learn to read currents on the surface of a river. Some stars do not quite make it to full ignition. Brown dwarfs are in-between objects, heavier than giant planets, yet too light to sustain the steady hydrogen fusion that defines a star. They glow faintly from the heat of their formation and from slow reactions of heavier hydrogen, and they cool with age. They are a reminder that nature allows a spectrum, not only categories, and that boundaries are sometimes soft. The chemistry of starlight is encoded in its spectrum, a rainbow crossed with slender shadows and bright threads. Every element leaves a pattern, and by reading those patterns, we learn what stars are made of, how fast they spin, whether they sway toward us or away, and how their surfaces stir. We use this knowledge carefully and admit our uncertainties. Research often shows that even simple readings can carry quiet surprises, and that is part of the pleasure of paying attention. Stars do not keep all of their light for far distances. Sometimes the light meets dust close by and scatters, bathing a region in a pale glow. Sometimes dust between us and a star makes the star appear slightly redder, the way smoke can make a lamp seem warmer. Sometimes a star pulses in a regular way, growing brighter and dimmer over many days and weeks because of changes in its outer layers. These variations are signals, and even if we do not decode them tonight, we can let them be like the evening's own dimming and brightening as clouds come and go. Our own sun has a future that is well sketched in outline. In roughly 5 billion years, it will swell into a red giant, likely enveloping the inner planets and bathing the outer ones in warmer light. Later, it will shed its outer layers into a glowing shell and leave a white dwarf core, gradually fading over times longer than any story our species tells. By then, the galaxy will have turned, other stars will have been born and died, and new arrangements of worlds will have spun under different suns. For you tonight, it is enough to know that the present is stable and the distant future is unrushed. There are also quiet births at the edges of our noticing. In some regions, faint stars form that are barely visible to us, and they light their tiny neighborhoods with a weak but honest glow. In other places, star formation pauses for long spans. As winds and prior explosions clear the fuel, the galaxy is not uniform. It is a patchwork of busy and calm, of cooking and cooling, of noise and silence. Your day may be similar. Some hours are crowded with tasks, some are empty and good for sitting. We can think of energy flow as the thread that ties stellar life together. Fusion in the core presses outward, gravity pulls inward, and the star self-regulates. If the center grows hotter, pressure rises and the star expands a little, cooling the outer layers. If the center cools, the star contracts a bit, raising the heat again. This negative feedback keeps the structure stable for a very long time. You can use that idea in your body right now. If thoughts heat up, expand the breath and lengthen the exhale. If you feel flat, allow a slightly fuller inhale and a slower pause. Some stars are variable because they share mass with a companion, or because magnetic fields on their surfaces rise and fall, or because they spin quickly and show brighter and dimmer zones. The sky, if watched carefully, is a field of slow heartbeats. It does not demand our tracking, yet it rewards a glance. You might, before sleep, let your attention widen and then narrow like a lens, taking in the whole of your room and then a single detail, such as the edge of the blanket or the shadow on a wall. Over very long times, the ingredients made in stars change the galaxy. Each generation enriches the gas a little more, and that gas then makes new stars and planets that include more kinds of atoms. This slow distillation is why rocky planets can exist, why water and carbon compounds can appear, and why chemistry can grow elaborate enough to become biology. We are sitting at the end of many such cycles, and the night that holds us is the same night that held the first clouds that would become stars. The continuity is gentle and wide. Sometimes dead stars meet again. Two white dwarfs can spiral inward and merge. Two neutron stars can do the same, and their unions can briefly be as bright as a supernova, while also sending ripples through space that we can record as a changing stretch and squeeze. These mergers can create heavy elements in sudden floods, then cast them outward into the interstellar medium. The drama is short and far away. The outcome is long-lived and close to home, in the matter of rings, instruments, and bones. In certain parts of the sky, we can see stars with dusty veils, debris left from collisions of growing planets or from crumbled comets. That dust glows in infrared light, the way warm sand radiates after sunset. These signs tell us that planet building is still common, that the story of small worlds is not unique to our system. It is not a promise that any particular world holds life. It is a gentle suggestion that the conditions for interesting chemistry are widespread. Possibility can be a comfort even when it is not a certainty. When we map the positions of many stars, we notice they gather along the flattened plane of our galaxy and thin out towards the poles of that plane. We also notice streams and arches, remnants of smaller galaxies that our Milky Way has gently absorbed over long times. Stars remember their origins in their motions and in their compositions, and by reading those clues, we learn the family tree of our home. Knowing where we come from is a kind of rest. Even for a galaxy, we may not see them with the naked eye, but newborn stars often send jets of gas out from their poles, narrow and straight, like threads drawn through cloth. These jets can last for thousands of years, carving cavities in the surrounding cloud and clearing space for light to escape. They are a sign that the complicated process of growth and shedding is underway. Beginnings often come without flows, and that too is a pattern we recognize in ourselves. Now we return to the simple truth that stars are timekeepers as well as furnaces. Their lifetimes bracket the stages of a galaxy's life. Their light carries timestamps set when the beam began its journey. When you look at a star, you often see it as it was years or hundreds or thousands of years ago. There is a softness in that delay, as if the universe always gives us a moment to arrive, to adjust, to breathe. Take a slow breath in now and note how the body grows a little lighter at the top of the inhale. Let it go and feel the gentle heaviness that follows. Stars breathe too, in a way. They expand and contract over cycles. They shed and gather. They calm and flare, all at scales we only glimpse. You do not need to keep the whole cosmos in mind to sleep. You can hold a single point of light, or even just the idea of light, and let the rest blur. As we close, we picture the galaxy dimming its lamps one by one, not from loss, but from completion, while new wicks catch and burn steadily elsewhere. The factories of time keep turning, forging elements and stories, and returning their work to the common store. Tonight, you are not required to be a factory. You are invited to be a field at dusk, quiet and open, under a sky that is busy on your behalf. If sleep arrives in the next few breaths, let it cover you like a nebula, cool and protective, and know that the stars will continue their patient labor without your supervision. If sleep takes a few minutes more, keep listening to the minimum, the hush of a room, the rhythm of a chest, the distant idea of starlight. You are safe. The story is complete for now. We will meet the night again, and the stars will be where we left them, working slowly, turning time into light, and then back into matter, and then again into the quiet from which we draw our rest. We arrive at a higher ledge of scale where cities of stars drift in patient arrangements. Let the breath smooth out, a slow tide that comes in and goes out. If these quiet journeys help you rest, a soft touch on like and a gentle subscribe will bring you back to this path again. For now, we lean into the hush and walk among galaxies and the dark fabric that holds them. We begin with a simple picture. A galaxy is a community of stars, gas, dust, and something unseen that provides most of the grip. Some galaxies show elegant spiral arms, like ripples frozen into a disk. Some are rounded and smooth, like faint embers. Others look irregular, a reminder that nature allows for asymmetry. Shapes can change over time as galaxies meet, trade gas, and settle, the way shorelines slowly change with the sea. Take a slow inhale and let it go. Shape, like breath, is a rhythm more than a rule. In the center of many large galaxies sits a massive object that we cannot see directly, a region where gravity is so strong that not even light escapes once it crosses a quiet boundary. Around this core, stars move quickly, gas heats and swirls, and sometimes bright jets emerge. We often find that the mass of this central engine links gently with the size of the galaxy around it, as if a conductor's calm hand sets the tempo for a broad orchestra. It is not a loud command. It is a steady influence felt over long spans. Between stars, light meets dust, and dust leaves delicate signatures. That is why spiral galaxies show dark lanes that lace through their arms. These lanes are not empty. They are cool nurseries where future stars may form, places that swallow blue light and glow softly in infrared. When we look at a spiral, we see both the present and a sketch of future births. If we drift outward from the disk of a galaxy, something quiet and vast surrounds us. A halo of ancient stars and clusters, fading into near invisibility, and beyond that, an even larger crown of thin, hot gas extends for hundreds of thousands of light years. This faint atmosphere, sometimes called a circumgalactic medium, is a reservoir that galaxies use and replenish. It is where outflows from supernova and central activity deposit heat and metals, and where cool streams can return to feed new stars. Imagine it as the weather of a city of stars, slow and wide. Now we pause on the unseen. Observations often show that the stars and gas we can count are not enough to explain how galaxies hold together. The outer stars move too fast to be bound by visible matter alone. Something extra provides gravity's missing hand. We call it dark matter because it does not glow or block light in a way we can easily detect. We infer its presence from its pull. It gathers in halos that cradle galaxies like invisible wreaths, and it threads space with long filaments. Take an easy breath. We do not need to solve its nature tonight. We can rest with the knowledge that the universe includes a helpful hidden scaffolding. When many galaxies live near one another, we call the arrangement a group or a cluster. In groups, a few galaxies interact gently like neighbors sharing fences and gardens. In clusters, hundreds to thousands of galaxies ride in a common gravity well, and the spaces between them are filled with a hot, thin gas that glows in high-energy light. These environments shape the lives of galaxies. Some lose gas to the wind of the cluster and slowly stop forming new stars, turning from blue and lively to red and calm. Others merge and rekindle star formation in a brief blaze before quiet settles again. Cities change with their weather. Galaxies do too. Across even larger distances, the distribution of galaxies draws a lace of structure we often call a cosmic web. Imagine strands made mostly of dark matter, with galaxies and clusters hanging on them like dewdrops. Between strands lie wide voids, regions with few galaxies, open and hushed. Gravity causes matter to flow along the filaments toward the nodes, deepening the pattern over time. We can trace some of these strands by the way they lens background light, or by the way gas along them absorbs light from distant beacons. The web is not an object we can touch. It is a pattern that emerges from the way gravity gathers matter. Patterns can be calming. When galaxies meet, they rarely allow individual stars to collide. The distances between stars are too large for that, even in crowded places. What meets instead are their clouds of gas and their global gravitational fields. Tides stretch the disks, plumes of stars arc outward, and clouds compress and spark new star formation. Over hundreds of millions of years, interacting galaxies can blend into one, sometimes growing a smooth elliptical shape, sometimes preserving a disk. The dance is long and slow, and it reminds us that even grand encounters can be gentle most of the time. Some galaxies shine fiercely from their cores. Gas falling toward the central mass heats up and glows across many wavelengths, sometimes outshining the light of all the surrounding stars. In the distant past, such active cores were common, and their brightness lets us see them across billions of light years. We often call these brilliant cores quasars, quiet lighthouses from a younger universe. They light up the fog between galaxies and allow us to read the fingerprints of gas along the beam's path, learning what the space between galaxies contains. Even brightness can be a tool for listening. Closer to home, our Milky Way is a spiral with bars and arms, threaded with dust and bright with star-forming regions. Around it orbit many small companion galaxies, faint systems whose stars are few and old, or sometimes young and metal-poor. These dwarf galaxies are stories in miniature. Some are ancient fossils of early times. Some are bruised by tides. Some will fall in and dissolve, adding their stars to the Milky Way's outskirts as long streams. You can picture our galaxy not as a single city, but as a town with many satellites, each one helping write the valley's history. Ahead lies a long appointment. Our Milky Way and the Andromeda Galaxy move toward each other along the slow draw of gravity. Their outer halos already mingle. Their motions are a quiet promise that in several billion years they will merge. The night sky of a far future Earth-like vantage point would show Andromeda growing large over many lifetimes, then twisting arcs and bridges of stars as the disks interleave. The odds that our sun will hit another star during this process are very low. Mostly, orbits will be disturbed, gas will be compressed, and new stars will flare and settle. Then the combined galaxy will rest. This is not a threat. It is a distant choreography we will not need to manage. Galaxies age. In some, gas runs low or is heated so that it cannot collapse easily, and the rate of new star formation declines. The colors slowly redden as short-lived blue stars die, and longer-lived red and yellow stars remain. These quiescent systems can be very large, with stars moving on boxy, complex paths. They are not failed galaxies, they are elders. Meanwhile, other galaxies keep forming stars at a steady pace, their disks gently lit by strings of young clusters. The universe holds both quiet afternoons and busy mornings at once. Gravitational lensing, the bending of light by mass, helps us map the invisible. A cluster can act as a natural telescope, magnifying and stretching images of galaxies behind it. Sometimes we see luminous arcs, sometimes rings, sometimes multiple images of a single distant object. From these distortions, we can infer how mass, including dark matter, is arranged. The method is indirect but reliable, like reading wind from the swaying of grass. You do not need the equations. The idea is enough. Mass curves the paths of light, and curved light shares secrets. Dust is not a nuisance. It is part of the script. In disk galaxies, dust grains form in the envelopes of dying stars and in the ejecta of supernovae. They mix with gas and provide surfaces for molecules to assemble. Dust cools clouds by radiating energy away, helping gas to collapse into new stars. It also changes the color of light that reaches us, reddening and dimming what would otherwise be blue. When we adjust for dust, we are not correcting a mistake. We are translating a dialect. In the outskirts of galaxies, sparse stars tell old tales. Globular clusters, tight spheres with many thousands or millions of stars, swing in wide orbits like lanterns hung along ancient roads. Their stars are old and often metal-poor, preserving chemistry from earlier times. Streams of stars, long and thin, trace the remnants of smaller systems that were torn apart. By mapping these features, we reconstruct how big galaxies grow, not only by forming stars in-house, but also by welcoming newcomers over long eras. Clusters of galaxies are weather machines. Their central regions sometimes show bubbles in the hot gas, where jets from the central galaxy have pushed material aside. Those jets are powered by gas falling onto the central mass, and their energy can help prevent the cluster's core from cooling too quickly. If the gas cooled unchecked, it could form stars at a rate the available fuel cannot sustain. Instead, many clusters show a balance between cooling and heating, a thermostat without a dial. Balance is a theme in this architecture. We often speak of the universe as homogeneous on the largest scales, and that is true when we average over huge volumes. Yet up close, structure is rich and varied. Filaments feed galaxies, galaxies blow winds back to their surroundings. Radiation from young stars and active cores changes the state of gas over large regions. Feedback is a quiet partner to gravity. It does not erase the web. It colors it, sets the pace, and sometimes pauses the rhythm. Sometimes a galaxy's star formation is suddenly enhanced by an encounter. Gas clouds collide and compress. A starburst flares for a few tens of millions of years, and then winds and radiation restore calm. The colors shift blue for a while, then settle. From afar, we see this as a galaxy with clumpy brightness, knots like pearls along arms, or a luminous core. Up close, we would find many short-lived massive stars that will end as supernovae, returning energy and heavy elements to the gas. The system breathes even at scale. Dwarf galaxies can be fragile. In the presence of a giant neighbor, their gas can be stripped by the pressure of the larger galaxy's halo gas as they move through it, a process that quenches new star formation. Their shapes can be stirred by tidal forces, turning round dwarfs into elongated ones. Some dwarfs are so faint that we only find them by the motions of their few stars. The faintest systems may have high fractions of dark matter compared to stars, making them good places to study the dark fabric's properties. Small does not mean simple. The colors of galaxies are clues to their current habits. Blue indicates recent star formation because the hottest stars shine blue and live only tens of millions of years. Red and yellow indicate older populations. When we plot many galaxies by color and brightness, they often line up along two broad lanes, a red sequence of quiet systems and a blue cloud of star-forming disks, with a green valley in between where many are transitioning. This diagram is not a rule, it is a weather map. Systems can travel across it over time. Gas flows matter. Some galaxies receive cold streams along filaments that reach close to their centers, keeping star formation going steadily. Others live in hot environments where gas is heated and cannot easily cool, so star formation declines. Outflows from supernovae and active nuclei can lift gas out of the disk and deposit it in the halo, where it may cool and rain back later. The cycle is slow and it can repeat many times. If you listen closely, it is like the sound of rain on a roof far away. On the very largest scales, surveys show that the web pattern is not random. Filaments intersect at nodes where clusters live, sheets connect filaments, voids expand slightly as matter drains away. The overall geometry appears close to flat when averaged over vast distances, which means parallel lines stay roughly parallel, and the universe's expansion proceeds evenly in all directions. Within that expansion, gravity gathers matter into the web. The two motions coexist, the stretch of space and the local pull of mass, neither one canceling the other, both writing the architecture. We turn, for a moment, to time. Light from distant galaxies takes billions of years to reach us. When we observe a far quasar or a faint galaxy strung along a filament, we see it as it was when the universe was much younger. In that youth, galaxies often formed stars more rapidly, collisions were more frequent, and central engines were brighter. Over time, activity shifted. Some galaxies calmed, others kept going, and the web thickened. Looking far away is also looking far back. It is a gentle way to travel without moving. Now, a breath. Inhale and note the coolness of air at the tip of the nose. Exhale and let the shoulders sink by a fraction. Galaxies do not hurry. The forces at play are firm yet patient. You do not need to remember the labels. You can keep only the feeling that structure emerges from simple rules held for long times. We often wonder what dark matter is. There are many ideas, and research continues. What we can say tonight is that it behaves as a transparent mass that clusters and makes halos and filaments, does not collide with itself the way gas does, and interacts with normal matter mostly through gravity. It sets the scaffolding on which gas can cool and form stars, and it keeps the outer parts of galaxies spinning together. The details may change as knowledge grows, yet the broad picture has held across many kinds of measurements. Uncertainty here is comfortable. It leaves space for curiosity without disturbing rest. Dark energy, a different kind of mystery, shows itself in the way the universe's expansion speeds up on the largest scales. We see its effects in how distant supernovae appear slightly dimmer than a non-accelerating model would predict, and in the patterns of ripples in the ancient background light. Whether it is a property of space or a field we do not yet understand, it acts like a smooth pressure that pushes the web outward even as gravity knits locally. You do not need to hold this contrast. Just know that the architecture grows and settles at once. We return to the practicality of halos. The outer edges of galaxies where the visible light thins still belong to the system because the dark halo extends much farther. Satellite galaxies move within this halo. Streams drape through it. Hot gas bathes it. The halo is the galaxy's true extent, though it is hard to see. In life, edges also exist beyond what we first notice, soft boundaries that matter even when they are not brightly lit. Some galaxies have bars across their centers, straight structures of stars that channel gas inward and help rearrange orbits. Bars can trigger rings and support spiral patterns. They can also fade with time. They are not rigid beams. They are patterns of motion, collective agreements among many orbits. The lesson is gentle. Order can arise without a single solid rod. There are also galaxies with only a faint hint of structure, diffuse and low in surface brightness, spread like fog. They challenge our detection tools because their light is smeared thinly across a wide area. Some of them seem to live in environments that sheltered them from interactions. Some may be puffs left from tides. They remind us that absence of glare is not absence of substance. Quiet can hold mass. In the deep background, we sometimes see rings where one galaxy's gravity lenses another. We also see alignments where many small distortions add up to a collective signal, a weak lensing that maps the dark matter statistically across large patches of sky. Both strong and weak lensing are variations on the same principle, like loud and soft movements in a symphony. They let us sketch the unseen by listening to what light says after its journey. Even the voids contribute. Though underdense, they are not perfect emptiness. They contain thin gas and a whisper of galaxies. As matter drains into filaments, voids expand a little, and the galaxies inside move outward, riding the gentle swell. These regions offer a laboratory for how structure grows when gravity has little to hold. They are the negative space that gives the web its definition. Take another breath. Notice the slight pause at the top before the air turns around. That pause is everywhere in the sky. between collisions, between bursts of star formation, between the bright epochs of active cores. The universe rests, then moves, then rests. You can follow the same pattern and allow the body to grow heavier against the bed or chair. As our tour softens, we gather the threads. Galaxies are communities with habits. Dark matter provides the frame. Gas and dust provide the raw material. Stars light the streets. Central engines keep time. Feedback sets the thermostat. Environment nudges behavior. The cosmic web connects neighborhoods. Over billions of years, mergers and accretion and outflows write revisions to the plan. The result is not a static blueprint, but an evolving city that remains legible at a glance. If you look up on a clear night far from city lights, the pale band of the Milky Way is our local address written across the sky. What appears as mist is the combined glow of many stars, too faint to differentiate with bare eyes. Embedded in that glow are dark rifts of dust, bright knots of young stars, and the quiet pull of an invisible halo. The same ingredients appear in galaxies far away, scaled and recombined, playing variations on a theme as old as space itself. We end where we began, with silence as architecture. The dark weave does not shine, yet it bears weight. The filaments do not speak, yet they guide. The halos do not draw lines, yet they set limits. This is a design that relies on patience more than force, on time more than speed. While you let the next exhale lengthen by a heartbeat, imagine the web holding the galaxies as softly as a net holds pearls, not to trap them, but to keep them together in one wide story. Night is a generous editor. It removes the sharp edges and leaves the shapes. You are safe here in a room within a star-fed city, inside a halo on a filament of a larger web. The grand architecture around you needs no supervision. You can let the breath grow shallow and easy. If sleep arrives, let it arrive like a slow drift through a dust lane into a quieter arm. If it lingers, rest with the knowledge that the galaxies continue their calm work without hurry. The pattern holds, the silence is full, and we are carried gently within it. We open a gentle window onto the sky where weather has no clouds, only streams and sparks and the soft drift of dust. Breathe in slowly and let the exhale grow longer than the inhale. If these quiet journeys help you rest, a light tap on like and a soft subscribe will keep our path easy to find again. For now, we lean together into the hush and listen to the breeze between worlds. We start with the wind that never stops. Our star exhales a constant flow of tiny charged particles, a breath that fills space in all directions. This solar wind is thin beyond anything we know on Earth, yet it shapes vast regions, presses on magnetic shields, and combs the tails of comets into elegant fans. While we breathe once more, imagine that wind as a slow river of light, patient and steady. Sometimes that steady wind carries gusts. The star's surface can brighten and release clouds of particles that move outward like rolling waves. When these waves arrive at a planet with a magnetic field, they rattle invisible lines of force and pour energy into the upper air. The result can be curtains of color near the poles, sky rivers that shimmer and fold, reminding us that weather can be silent and charged at once. Earth wears a magnetic cloak that deflects much of this flow. The cloak stretches like a teardrop, compressed on the day side and drawn out into a long tail on the night side. Along the edges, thin boundary layers let some particles leak inward, where they spiral down magnetic funnels towards the polar regions. You can picture the planet rocking gently inside a protective shell, the way a boat ride swells while the deep water below stays calm. In the long reaches between the planets, space is not empty. There is dust, smaller than grains of sand, drifting like a very faint fog. Sunlight scatters on this dust and paints a pale wedge that can be seen on the darkest nights, rising along the path of the zodiac. This soft glow is not a cloud in our air. It is the solar system's own faint afterglow, a quiet reminder that even tiny pieces can light the way. Dust falls on us every day. Micrometeorites, no larger than a speck, arrive by the thousands, melting and cooling as they pass through the air. Most land unnoticed on oceans, ice, and fields, settling into the great archives of Earth. We can think of them as nightly silt from a cosmic river, adding a patient measure of stardust to our world. Between these small arrivals and the great storms, there are other travelers. Comets come from far reservoirs where ice and rock wait in the cold. When a comet swings inward, the star's warmth frees gas from its surface and drags dust with it, creating a glowing head and a long tail. The tail does not point backward along the path. It points away from the star as light and wind draw it out with invisible hands. The solar wind is more than a breeze. It is a boundary maker. Far from the star, it slows against the thin wind of the space between the stars, forming a broad frontier where the star's influence ends. Inside this bubble, magnetic fields guide particles. Outside it, a different sea begins. A few patient spacecraft have crossed that edge and found the interstellar tide beyond. While we rest into the next breath, it is enough to know that our system has a shore. Charged particles arrive from even greater distances. We call them cosmic rays, though they are mostly solitary atomic nuclei moving at near light speed. Many pass right through us and through Earth, as if we were made of lace, leaving no trace. Sometimes they strike the upper air and spark cascades that drift down like ghostly rain. Most of the time, we do not notice. The body rests, the sky is quiet, and yet a distant storm has sent a single drop. The giant planet that guards the outer system plays a role in this weather. Its gravity can deflect or capture some incoming comets and fragments, changing their paths before they reach the inner worlds. It acts like a slow, massive gatekeeper and sometimes like a magnet for impacts. Not every visitor is caught, but the presence of a giant neighbor shifts the traffic in ways we can measure. We live in a neighborhood where the big houses matter. Closer in, another kind of weather whispers across radio waves. Magnetized planets can sing in frequencies our ears cannot hear, especially when their auroras are active. These radio emissions rise and fall with storms in the wind and with the turning of the planet itself. If we could translate them, they might sound like long chords, their volume swelling as particles pour in along magnetic lines, then softening as the system relaxes. The solar wind shapes the tails of comets into two distinct streams. One is made of gas ionized by light, responding directly to magnetic fields and the wind's pressure. The other is made of dust pushed by sunlight itself, curving gently as the comet moves. Together they create a fan that always points away from the star, whether the comet advances or retreats. The tail is not a flag of direction, but a compass of light. Asteroids move among the planets, but they do not form a solid wall. The belt between Mars and Jupiter is a wide region of many stones, most far from each other by great distances. If you could stand on one, the next would not fill the sky. Instead, you would see the star, the planets as bright points, and emptiness stretching in every direction. The imagination can hold both ideas at once. Many rocks and still a profound openness between them. Some small bodies have companions or travel in families, loose associations that share similar paths. Over time, sunlight and subtle forces can change their rotations and orbits, shifting them by tiny amounts that add up. Collisions sometimes break them into shards. Gentle tides stretch them into elongated shapes. The life of a rock in space is longer than any story we tell, yet it is not a still life. It drifts, it turns, it changes. A planet with thick air can have its own exotic rain. On a large moon of the outer system, the air is dense and cold, and liquid methane can pool in lakes and fall in showers. The landscape shows channels and deltas carved by a chemistry not our own. To imagine it, think of the rhythm of rain at home and then shift the palette. The same gravity's patience, the same soft tapping, the same calm, only with different drops. Other icy moons may hide oceans beneath hard shells. Cracks and geysers hint at warm water below, heated by tides that knead the interior as the moons circle their giant parent. Plumes shooting into space carry traces of salts and simple organics, like breath from a hidden sea. We do not need to decide tonight what swims there, only to note that warm water can exist in cold darkness, supported by steady mechanical hands. Even at the edge of the star's light, subtle beauty appears. A dwarf world far out shows a faint blue haze when backlit by the sun. The color comes from tiny particles high in its thin air, scattering light into gentle tones. It tells us that atmosphere is not only a blanket, it is a painter. Where gases gather even sparsely, they can turn sunlight into a wash of unexpected hues. Rings around planets are another kind of weather, permanent storms of ice and stone. The thinnest rings are shallow compared to their width, like sheets of paper spread over miles. Small shepherd moons move near the edges and keep the particles in place with their gravity, trimming arcs and holding gaps open. The choreography is subtle. Push here, pull there, and a spiral of fragments becomes a quiet band that endures. When the wind from the star grows active, Earth's magnetic belts respond. These belts are like storage rings for charged particles circling the planet above the atmosphere. Disturbances can load the belts with fresh energy or spill particles down into the air where they glow. Sometimes the effects reach communications and power systems. More often they simply paint the polar sky. As you breathe out, you can send an inward smile toward that distant green and red curtain. The atmosphere itself feels the tides of space. The same gravitational pull that lifts the oceans also moves the air and even the crust by tiny amounts. These tides are not dramatic, but they are steady, like the slow heartbeat of a sleeping world. They remind us that all layers of a planet are connected: rock, water, air, and the charged shell above them, responding to both the pull of nearby bodies and the breath of the star. Meteor showers mark the paths of ancient comets. As Earth crosses a stream of particles left from a comet's passage, small grains enter the air and flare into streaks. Most are no larger than seeds. Their light is bright because their speed is great. We can lie back, count them like slow fireworks, and remember that their origins are far off and long ago, yet their gifts arrive right on time. The shape of a comet's tail can change night by night. When the wind shifts, structures ripple along the tail like waves on a banner. Sometimes knots and twists form as magnetic fields vary. Sometimes a dust tail widens while the ion tail narrows. Observers speak of living geometry, but we do not need the labels. We can watch and let the forms be what they are, transient sculptures made by pressure and light. Not all travelers are icy. Some comets age into darker, tougher objects as their surface ices fade. These can resemble asteroids, and some asteroids may carry trapped ice beneath dusty crusts. The border between categories blurs, and nature shrugs at our need to sort. What matters to weather is the response to heat and light. Does a body shed gas and dust? Does it reflect or absorb? Does it hold onto its skin or crumble into a trail? The upper layers of planetary atmospheres are shaped by light. Ultraviolet radiation can break molecules apart. Charged particles can excite atoms to glow. The air's composition and temperature determine whether it swells or contracts with the sun's pulse. On worlds with weak gravity, some of that heated air can escape and drift into space like breath on a winter morning. A planet's long-term climate depends not only on its ground and oceans, but also on this steady leak and refill at the top. Beyond the orbit of the giant planet that guards us, smaller giants carry their own weather marks. One ice giant keeps delicate rings in place, with moon shepherds that herd the particles into arcs rather than full circles. The result is a set of broken bracelets, each segment held in a quiet balance of pushes and pulls. The picture is patient. If you return many years later, the arcs still sit where the shepherds tell them to, like carefully tended hedges. When a stream of solar particles hits Earth's dayside, it piles up and slows, forming a bow shock in the thin plasma around us. The magnetic field lines drape and reconnect, storing and releasing energy in bursts that can turn into auroral substorms on the night side. This is weather in every sense, just not with clouds and rain. It has fronts, pressure changes, flashes, and lulls. And like earthly weather, it often follows patterns that let us prepare. We can sense cosmic weather not only by light, but by touch. Instruments aboard high-flying platforms feel the density of particles and the hardness of radiation belts. On the ground, magnetometers trace the subtle swings of Earth's field as storms pass. Radio receivers hear the star's static and the planet's own whisper. Even without instruments, we can notice the way the air glows at the poles when the wind is strong and the sky is clear. The surface of a small, airless body records the history of this weather. Micrometeorite impacts churn the topmost layer into a dusty regolith. Solar wind implants particles into grains, changing their color and chemistry. Over time, even a bright rock can darken and redden as it bakes, is sandblasted, and is touched by charged particles. There is no rain to wash it clean, so its face grows old and complicated under the star's constant gaze. Sometimes two travelers meet. Asteroids collide at high speed and fragment into families of smaller pieces that spread along similar orbits. The debris cloud thins with time, but the shared origin remains written in the fragments' paths and colors. These families are like constellations that move, genealogies etched not in stories but in stone and motion. In the deep cold far from the sun, there are belts of objects that were never gathered into a single planet. Their orbits can be nearly circular or surprisingly stretched. Some are guided into resonances with the giants, where a quiet partnership keeps them from wandering too close. Over aeons, these belts feed the inner system with occasional visitors, and they keep their own slow traffic flowing in the dark. Space weather sometimes touches us in practical ways. Strong storms can disturb radio communications, confuse navigation signals, and induce currents in long wires on the ground. Most days, though, the effects stay aloft, a ballet of particles and fields that do not trouble daily life. As you notice the body softening into the mattress or chair, let the thought pass that the sky can be busy while the room stays still. We shift our attention to the smallest piece we have not yet honored, the single grain of dust. A grain released from a comet begins to spiral slowly inward because of the way sunlight carries momentum. The effect is gentle, like a very faint drag, and over long times it changes the grain's path. Some grains fall into the sun, some are nudged into planets or moons, some join the zodiacal cloud and stay there for a while, reflecting the star's light into our night. In the thin upper air, atoms of oxygen and nitrogen glow in colors that depend on energy and height. Greens, reds, violets. Each hue marks a different layer and a different process. Sometimes the lights flicker. Sometimes they form steady arcs called auroral ovals, centered not on the geographic poles but on the magnetic ones. This dance is not choreographed by chance. It follows the shapes of fields that we can map as they curve out into space and back. On worlds with weak or no magnetic fields, space weather has a more direct route to the surface. The wind can strip air over millions of years, atom by atom, thinning what was once thicker. On such worlds, ancient riverbeds and shorelines can speak of different days when air and water were more abundant. The lesson is not that loss is inevitable, but that shield and breath go together. A planet's field, its air, its water, and its warmth are threads in one weave. There is also a harmony between storms and life. High-energy particles can help form hazes in upper atmospheres, adding to the palette of a sky. Lightning, driven by convection far below, can create simple molecules from simpler gases, changing the chemistry for the layers beneath. The story repeats at many scales. Energy arrives, patterns form, material cycles, and a new balance emerges. When night is truly dark, far from city lamps, the faint counterglow opposite the sun sometimes appears, a soft patch where sunlight has scattered twice in the dust. It is a reminder that light can take indirect routes to reach us. Even what is dim can be generous if the conditions are right. As we settle deeper, we can hold that thought with ease. Small things, given time and repetition, add up to a quiet brightness. We close by gathering the weather into one image. The star breathes, the wind flows, fields bend, particles swirl, dust drifts, travelers come and go, rings hum, skies glow, oceans hide beneath ice, distant worlds haze into soft color. Nothing demands our effort. The system maintains itself with patience and with rules that are sturdy yet kind. You need remember none of the terms, only the feeling that the space around us is not empty but alive with gentle motion. Let the next inhale be smooth and the exhale be longer. The room is safe. The bed holds you. Outside, the magnetic shield hums quietly. Above that, the wind carries on its way. Farther still, a comet turns its face to the sun and grows a tail that points outward like a compass needle. If sleep comes, let it come like drifting snow of micrometeorites, soft and constant. If wakefulness lingers, rest anyway, held by the same quiet that steadies worlds. We are small travelers under a wide, tender sky, and the weather is kind tonight. We step together into a slower tide of time, where the universe begins not with noise, but with a widening hush. Let the breath lengthen on the way out, and let your shoulders settle as if gravity becomes a little kinder. If this soft astronomy helps you drift, a quiet like and a gentle subscribe will make it easier to return. For now, we simply rest and wander. We start where there is no before, only a change that becomes time itself. The beginning is not an explosion inside space. It is space unfurling, a fabric that was once tightly gathered and then starts to stretch. Everywhere expands at once, and so nowhere is the center. If you notice the mind trying to picture a bursting fireball in a black room, you can let that image go and feel instead the idea of a woven cloth loosening in every thread. Very early, there is a brief and remarkable growth spurt. The fabric expands far faster than any light could cross, smoothing bumps and ironing out wrinkles. This short moment, often called a rapid swelling, explains why the universe today looks even and calm when we step back to the largest scales. It is as if a sudden breath at the start sets the pattern for all the quiet that follows. As the fabric grows, it cools. The bright soup of particles thins, and light begins to matter less than the gentle pull of gravity that gathers. Within a small slice of a second, ghost-like particles called neutrinos slip free and stream through everything, almost never touching. They form a pale background that still crosses us now, a wind of almost nothing that began when time itself was newly opened. We breathe in and out, and we move forward by great strides. After a few 100,000 years, the universe becomes transparent. Before that, light is constantly scattered by charged particles. After that, atoms form and light can finally travel long distances without being bumped. This ancient light is still here, cooled by expansion to a temperature of about 2.7 Kelvin, a faint radio glow that fills every direction like a soft memory of the first dawn. This glow is almost uniform, yet not perfectly the same. Tiny ripples in its temperature mark places where the early soup was a little denser or a little thinner. Over many billions of years, those gentle differences grow into galaxies, clusters, and the long filaments of matter between them. The oldest light is a picture of the universe in its childhood, and the details on that picture become today's grand structures. We can pause and notice the breath again, slower now, and feel the body grow heavier against the bed or chair. It is safe to rest while the story carries us. The large truths do not hurry, and neither do we. The first stars do not appear right away. For a long stretch, there are no lights, only dark hydrogen and helium drifting in expanding space. Then gravity wins small victories, drawing gas into knots that ignite. Those first stars are thought to be huge and hot, burning their fuel quickly and ending their lives in powerful endings that spray newly forged elements into the surrounding night. In that way, the later universe inherits carbon, oxygen, and iron from an early generation that lived fast and bright. The darkness between those early beacons becomes less opaque. The shine from the first stars and the first small galaxies strips electrons from the hydrogen fog that once absorbed starlight. Space clears the way for light to pass, and a transparent universe begins in earnest. The era of darkness gives way to an era of glow, and along the long filaments of matter, galaxies take their places like lanterns hung on a web. We look far away to look far back because light needs time to travel. The most distant galaxies we see tonight are not as they are now. They are as they were when the universe was only a few 100 million years into its life. Their light has been stretched on the journey by the expansion of space, so it arrives redder and softer, like a musical note held and lowered by a sliding hand. This stretching, called redshift, is more than a trick of light. It is a clock that records the growth of the fabric itself. There is no rim to the universe we can point to, no special center from which everything flees. Expansion happens everywhere. The way dots painted on a balloon all move away from each other as the surface grows. On the largest scales we can measure, the universe looks the same in one direction as in another, and the average density here resembles the average density far away. This sameness is not perfect, but it is steady enough to guide our maps. Sometimes gravity lends us a lens. A large mass curves the paths of passing light, and a distant galaxy is magnified or split into arcs and echoes around a nearer cluster. These natural lenses reveal what would otherwise be too faint, and at the same time, they draw maps of invisible matter because the degree of bending tells us how much weight is hidden. We do not need to see the unseeable stuff to sense it. We follow the paths of light and deduce the shape of the unseen hand. The invisible hand holds galaxies together as they spin. The stars would fly outward if only the light matter were present, but something heavier surrounds them and adds extra gravity. We call it dark matter because it neither shines nor absorbs in ways we can easily catch. Yet its pull is clear in the speeds of stars, in the shapes of clusters, and in the smooth web on which galaxies gather. You can imagine wreaths held by hidden hoops, ornaments strung on cords we cannot see but can feel by their effects. We take another slow breath. The mind may want a single answer here, a name and a formula, but night invites gentler phrases. Dark matter may be a family of shy particles. It may have properties we have not yet guessed. For rest, it is enough that the unseen scaffold keeps the bright towns of stars in place. On very large scales, there is another influence, softer and stranger. The expansion of the universe is not only continuing, measurements show that it is speeding up. It is as if some persistent pressure gently pushes the fabric outward. We call this dark energy, a name that admits what we do not yet know. It might be a property of space itself, an almost constant hum that becomes more important as the universe grows. If you picture the future, you can imagine distant galaxies drifting farther and fainter, while the local group of galaxies stays bound together by shared gravity, like a small raft on a widening sea. To know how far things are, we do not rely on one tool. We build a ladder of methods, each step reaching farther by using the steps below as anchors. Nearby stars sway a tiny amount against the background as Earth orbits the Sun. That motion gives us their distances by simple geometry. Some stars change in brightness in regular ways that tell us how bright they truly are. And by comparing true brightness to apparent brightness, we can estimate their distances farther out. On larger scales, certain stellar endings shine with nearly known power, acting like standard candles that flash across great volumes of space. In this way, near teaches us to measure far, and far teaches us to measure farther still. Along the way, we find brief and brilliant alarms. There are explosions that release tremendous energy in a matter of seconds or minutes, sending out hard light that we detect as a sudden burst. Many of these signals may come from collapsing massive stars or from the tight embrace of dense objects spiraling together. They are lighthouses that blink once and then fade, but their flash lets us probe distant eras and the environments where extremes occur. Between the grand filaments of the cosmic web lie wide regions with fewer galaxies. We call them voids, though they are not truly empty. Thin gas, a whisper of dust, and the passing of faintly bound particles fill those spaces. The quiet there is only thicker. Gravity still rules, matter still moves, light still finds a path. If we could float there, the largest structures would recede to the horizon, and the sense of vastness would deepen, like standing in a snowy field at night, where sound is muffled and the sky is very clear. We can bring our thoughts back from the edge and settle on the present. Our home galaxy is one among many, resting on one strand of the larger web. The central neighborhoods have grown older and quieter. The outer neighborhood still forms stars from cool clouds. A great neighbor approaches over timescales beyond our lives, and in the far future our galaxies will merge, stars gliding through one another while gas collides and glows. All of this unfolds on scales that leave tonight undisturbed. There is a comforting order in the numbers that describe the universe's shape. When we measure how the old light bends and how patterns spread upon it, we find a geometry that is very close to flat. In such a geometry, parallel lines remain parallel, and triangles behave the way they do on a tabletop rather than on a curved sphere. This near flatness implies a balance between the content of the cosmos and its rate of expansion, a balance that the early rapid swelling naturally tends to produce. We do not need to carry the equations to sleep. We can carry the sense of a thin tightrope walked with surprising steadiness. The old light that bathes the sky is cool now, but it was once warm enough to glow as the brightest fire. As space stretched, the light's wavelength stretched with it, and so it lost energy and wandered from blue to red to microwave radio. The same stretching affects the light of distant galaxies we mentioned earlier, and the degree of stretch is a ruler we can read. We look across time and watch the tone of the universe change, like a song that begins with a shout and fades into a lullaby. even our measurements admit a kind of humility. We have only one universe to study, and so our statistics are drawn from a single great sample. Some patterns we see on the largest scales may be simply the luck of one roll rather than the rule of many. This variation is not an error, it is a limit. We work within it, and we let it remind us that one view, however sweeping, is still a view from where we stand. While you rest, notice again the ease of the breath. The mind may wander, that is all right. The timeline is long enough to catch us when we return. The star fields we enjoy tonight owe their variety to the chemical work of earlier ages. The first stars made the first heavy elements. Later generations made more, and their endings seeded clouds that later formed planets. Each atom of calcium in your bones, each atom of iron in your blood, passed through a star or through the ashes of one. We are not only in the universe is within us in a very literal way. This thought can feel large, but it rests gently if we let it. Where does this leave us now in a quiet room, under a sky still humming with faint afterglow? It leaves us in a living present that carries the imprint of deep time in every direction. The expansion that began at the start continues still, and the same balance of gravity and pressure that shaped the first patterns also shapes the weather of space around our planet. The grand and the near are part of one story. We can imagine future nights when the distant galaxies are more distant still, their light stretched until they are hard to see. We can imagine others nearer by, the ones bound to us, becoming our close community in a universe that grows lonelier on the horizon. Even then, the old light would persist within the bubble of what remains visible, a calm sea in which our small raft floats. The raft is sturdy, the water is wide, the stars are faithful. Sometimes we think of time as a ladder with evenly spaced rungs. In cosmology, it is more like a shoreline, where low tide reveals long shelves and high tide covers them again. Great events in the first minute mark boundaries that would seem tiny by later standards. Slow changes stretch across billions of years like the drift of continents on a blue world. We are always walking the same beach, just at different hours. If you like, let your jaw soften and your hands untangle and grow weighty. The ground of the body is here. The ground of the universe is everywhere. We are held on both scales. We can trace one continuous thread from the beginning to the room. The rapid swelling sets the stage. The cooling and the first atoms let light free. The first stars kindle and make heavier atoms. Tiny fluctuations grow into galaxies, and galaxies feed new stars and planets. On one planet around one star, life arises and wonders about the first moments. Then life turns off the light, closes the eyes, and listens to a story about where everything came from. If the mind asks what came before the beginning, we can answer with kindness that before and after are part of the fabric that begins at the beginning. Asking what is north of the North Pole may be a useful exercise, but it need not prevent sleep. Curiosity can be a pillow as well as a drum. We are used to thinking of explosions as noisy and destructive. The first widening is a different sort of event. It is creative. It makes room for everything else. It is an absence that becomes a canvas, a silence that becomes a score. The energy of the early universe does not simply blow apart. It flows into space and time and sets the first measures of the song. The old light's tiny ripples are not flaws. They are gifts. Without them, matter would not gather. Without gathering, there would be no stars. Without stars, there would be no planets and no beings to listen to a quiet story before sleep. Imperfection, in the most subtle way, becomes structure, and structure becomes home. We can also take comfort in how the universe is readable. Light carries messages we can decode. A stretched wavelength tells of recession. A bent path tells of weight. A pattern on the oldest glow tells of the shape of space. We do not need to memorize the code tonight. It is enough to know that the messages are there, written softly into the sky. One last breath in and a slower breath out. The clock of the room ticks. The larger clock turns in longer cycles. The beginning is far behind, but it is also all around, woven into the background radiation that moves through the walls and through us without harm. The first stars are long gone, but their elements are here in our bodies. The web that connects galaxies is too thin to see, but its balance helps keep our home steady on its path. We end not with a conclusion, but with a feeling. From the first widening to this present night, the universe makes and remakes itself with patience. It does not hurry, it does not lag, it keeps a rhythm that allows both fire and rest. You can let the eyelids feel heavier, as if lowered by long gravity. If sleep arrives, it arrives like the cooling of the first light to a gentle radio whisper. If wakefulness remains, it can rest like a small boat on a wide, calm sea. Tonight we hold two truths at once. We are very small and we belong to something very large. Deep time stretches behind us and ahead of us, and yet the breath we take now is perfectly sized for our lungs. In that balance there is safety and quiet. We wish you an easy drift into the kind of sleep that keeps the starlight story playing softly in the background until morning finds you rested and ready to begin again. We drift back toward the lights of home as if a window is opening in the night and a familiar room appears. The breath softens without effort, and the shoulders find their place. If this quiet stargazing helps you rest, a simple like and a soft subscribe make it easier to meet here again. For now, we slow together. We begin with our blue world, small and bright against a wide, dark sea. Earth is rare, not because it is loud, but because it balances many quiet things at once. Water lingers here in three forms right on the surface: ice, liquid, and vapor, and that trio acts like a steadying hand on the climate. When oceans, clouds, and snow talk to sunlight, they keep temperatures from stumbling too far in either direction. Take an easy breath in and a longer breath out. Our shared air is thinner than it feels. If we could press the atmosphere into a single even layer, its depth would be only a few hundred meters, a shallow ocean of sky. Most of the air clings close to the ground, where leaves and roofs and waves can touch it. The vastness we sense above us is mostly space and light, a reminder that gentleness does not need thickness to be real. Within this airy ocean floats a protective veil. High above, a delicate band of gas filters harsh ultraviolet light, so that daytime feels welcoming rather than fierce. This shield does not block the sun, it softens it, tuning the light to a range where leaves can build sugars and skin can warm. It is a thin kindness stretched over a whole world. Between the sky and the rocky crust, the oceans hold the planet's long memory. Water stores heat slowly and releases it slowly, turning sharp spikes in temperature into rounded hills. A storm has trouble shaking a sea. A season has trouble rushing an ocean. In that way, the water is like a heavy blanket over restless sheets, smoothing their lines until sleep is easier. Forests lift water back into the air in a rhythm as steady as a breath. Each leaf opens tiny doors and lets vapor go, and that vapor gathers into clouds that wander and later return as rain. Roots draw from the soil, canopies feed the sky, and rivers thread the space between. When trees thrive, the air around them becomes a little more gentle, a little more likely to carry coolness and shade. We can let our own breathing echo these cycles. Notice the coolness of the air on the inhale and the warmth on the exhale. With each rise and fall, the body becomes a bit heavier on the bed or chair, like a stone finding the bottom through clear water. Life around us keeps time in patterns that feel both local and cosmic. Bees follow flowers with a clock set by daylight and season, the way stars follow their paths with a clock set by gravity and fuel. The scales differ, but the idea is the same: a rhythm, a season, a story that unfolds step by step. We are surrounded by metronomes we cannot hear and calendars we can feel. Sometimes a walk beneath a dark sky slows the heart's drum. The brain seems to enjoy the repeated pattern of bright points and dark spaces, a soft texture that asks for no quick decisions. Steps fall into a comfortable cadence, thoughts stretch out and lose their sharp corners, and worries shrink, not because they are denied, but because they are placed within a larger scene. Perspective does not erase, it just settles the dust. We look up with eyes tuned to only a narrow part of light. We see the colors our star gives most strongly, and we miss many others that travel beside them. Instruments extend our senses like extra ears and fingertips, making radio hum into pictures, turning infrared warmth into landscapes, and catching brief flashes of X-ray brightness our skin cannot feel. With each new window, the familiar becomes layered. A star is not only a dot, but also a song, a heat map, a quick heartbeat. When cameras stare into a small, empty patch of night for a long time, the emptiness fills with thousands of distant galaxies. Each one is a city of stars, and each city is caught at a particular moment on its own timeline. To gaze at such an image is to leaf through an album of ages, each page speaking of different eras while all are visible at once. We realize that looking far away is also looking far back, and the mind grows quiet in the face of such patient reach. There is no up or down in space, only choices of direction. Astronauts learn to call a ceiling a floor simply by turning their bodies. Telescopes label one side of the sky north because it helps us talk about what we see. In the same way, we can choose inner orientation. When we pick a gentler reference point inside, a room can feel safer, a breath can feel deeper, even if nothing outside has moved. We are a small part of the universe that has learned to look and to listen and to describe. This thought is not a trumpet, it is a lullaby. When we talk about the cosmos in quiet ways, we teach ourselves that wonder does not require a stage. It can fit inside a whisper and still be true. Stars, for all their might, are not forever. They change stages with age, swelling or shrinking, brightening or dimming, ending by folding into quiet embers or by scattering their matter back into space. Yet their light keeps traveling long after any final act is over. Somewhere, a star that ended millions of years ago still gives a soft glow to someone's evening walk. The worth of its shine is not undone by its ending. Its warmth has already been spent in kindness. Let the jaw relax and the tongue rest, the way a flag rests when the wind settles. Sleep is not a luxury added to life. It is part of the original design. During sleep, the brain often reorders impressions, placing new memories where they fit and discarding clutter. It is like a night librarian moving quietly between shelves, making the morning easier to enter. Sometimes we wake with a small answer we did not have before, not because we fought for it, but because we allowed it to be filed where we could find it. Meanwhile, the universe continues its gentle work, whether we watch or not. The expansion goes on, and galaxies follow their patient paths. Our planet turns and leans. The seasons trade places. Tides step in and out. The background glow from the first light moves through the walls and through us without harm. A faint hymn that began long before any of us and will continue long after this night. In that ongoing breath, there is room for our smaller breath, like a child's breathing heard within a larger house. Earth's position in space is both ordinary and lucky. We circle a stable star at a distance that melts and freezes water, but does not lock it in either form. Our globe spins at a rate that spreads sunlight and darkness in a rhythm that bodies can learn. The axis tilts just enough to write seasons into the year, giving plants reasons to bud and rest. Ordinary does not mean common, it means fitting, and we fit well here. Our magnetic field catches solar particles and guides them toward the poles, where they make curtains of light dance on winter nights. Underground, the planet keeps an engine turning, feeding that field and moving tectonic plates so that continents rearrange themselves over ages. These slow processes help recycle the planet's skin, storing carbon in rocks and returning it to the air when the time is right. The cycle is long, but its benefits are present in the air we breathe and the lands we walk. Clouds do not only shade, they are also mirrors and blankets. By day, bright clouds reflect sunlight back to space, keeping the surface from heating too quickly. By night, they trap warmth and release it slowly, smoothing temperature swings. On some mornings, a layer of fog builds a private sky near the ground, making the world small enough to feel like a room. When it lifts, the larger sky returns, and the day continues. Rivers do not merely travel downhill, they carry stories of mountains to the sea. Along the way, they feed wetlands that act like sponges, soaking up floods and releasing water during dry spells. Wetlands filter what flows through them, handing on cleaner water to the next reach. The planet's plumbing is full of such helpful pauses. Ice at the poles stores ancient air in bubbles, tiny time capsules we can read. Rings in tree trunks mark wet years and lean years, and the pattern of light and dark wood tells of growing seasons and rests. Coral skeletons stack like calendars bearing the grooves of tides and storms. The planet keeps minutes and hours in places we do not always look. We sometimes imagine Earth as isolated, yet it is in steady conversation with its neighbors. The moon steadies our tilt and shapes the tides. Meteors sprinkle dust that becomes seeds for clouds and fertilizers for oceans. The sun's changing mood sends gusts and calms that the magnetosphere translates into gentle sways in the upper air. The weather we feel on our skin is partly local and partly cosmic. In the night city, windows glimmer like small constellations. From orbit, cities look like spilled embers, and dark regions look like lakes of peace. Light pollution hides many stars from view, yet even in bright places, the moon holds steady and the brightest planets find a way through. When we seek darkness with care, on a hill, on a beach, in a park, the sky answers with more detail than we expected. Technology often feels like a new layer between us and the world, but it can also be a bridge. A small telescope or a borrowed pair of binoculars turns a fuzzy patch into a cluster, a bright dot into a disk with bands or a tiny moon. An app that shows the sky's map can turn confusion into recognition, like learning the names of friendly neighbors. We can learn just enough to say hello to the sky and no more. And that is still enough for a lifetime of looking. Perspective keeps offering small gifts. When we remember how thin the air is, we treat it with care. When we appreciate how slowly the oceans change, we are patient with progress and wary of sudden harm. When we recall that forests breathe for us, we find ourselves rooting for them as if for a team we love. The big frame does not ask us to feel small. It asks us to feel connected. We are shaped piece by piece from matter once forged in stars. The calcium that hardens our bones was pulled from starlight. The iron that carries oxygen in our blood was born in heat and pressure far greater than any furnace we have built. When we describe ourselves as made of star stuff, we are being literal and also tender. It is a way of saying that we belong. Let your hands grow heavy like moons at rest in their orbits. The body knows how to do this. It has done it every night since early childhood. We do not need to chase sleep. We only need to make room for it. the way space made room for galaxies, the way dusk makes room for stars. Home, then, is not only the walls around you or the street outside. Home is also the blue of the oceans, the thin air that lets birds fly and sound carry, the shield high above that edits sunlight into something gentle. Home is the way mountains slow winds and forests weave clouds. Home is the night sky itself, a roof that shelters all roofs. There will be nights when clouds cover everything and the stars are a rumor. Even then, the rhythms continue. The planet turns. The moon pulls on the tides, whether anyone watches or not. Somewhere far to the north or south, lights ripple like slow fire. Somewhere in the desert, the sky is so clear that the Milky Way looks like a river across a canyon. We are all under the same vast ceiling, even when it is not visible. If you open a window, the air that enters has touched leaves, lakes, and distant roofs. If you touch a wall, the minerals inside it come from mountains and ancient seabeds. If you listen very quietly, you may hear the low city hum that blends with wind and sometimes the rustle of a tree that learned its rhythm from the sun. The room is not separate. It is a small bay on the edge of the world's ocean. At last, we circle back to the breath. The cosmos keeps expanding at its steady pace. Earth keeps turning, and you keep breathing at a rate that is right for you tonight. On the inhale, you receive from the green work of daylight. On the exhale, you return what plants will use at dawn. That exchange is older than cities and newer than this moment. We close this quiet return with a simple truth. Each night, when you let your eyes grow heavy, the universe continues its soft respiration, and there is room within that larger breath for yours. You are at home in the only way that matters, held by gravity, warmed by a moderate star, protected by a thin veil of sky, and surrounded by patterns that favor life. May the rest ahead arrive like a tide that knows your shore, unhurried and sure, and may morning find you calm, aligned with the larger rhythm you belong to.